Hello and welcome back to GolfLoopz, the golf podcast for kids. This is episode 9. What is golf anyway? But before we get stuck into that, wow, I suck. 3 weeks since the last pod. I've had some vacation, been busy with my day job, and even played 100 holes of golf in one day. Really. But more about that some other time. I still have the sore feet to prove it. So till now on GolfLoopz, we've focused on the biggest championships and the most famous players in the world. But perhaps you've all listened to that and thought, hang on a minute, what actually is golf? What's all the fuss all about? What's a birdie? What's a drive? Why do golf courses have 18 holes? And why do we shout 4 at the start of this podcast? Well, today we're going right back to the beginning. This is, what is golf? So first, where did golf come from? Golf is known around the world as a Scottish game. And obviously being Scottish, I agree with that 100%. Now, history is always slightly more complicated. Way back to the days of cavemen, people hit rocks with sticks, and in several countries, games developed involving sticks, balls and targets. In the Netherlands, there was a game called Kolven, and in ancient China, there was a game called Chi-Wan. The honest answer is that nobody knows exactly who first invented the idea of hitting a ball with a stick. But the game of golf, as we recognise it today, developed in Scotland. Now, early Scottish golf was played on sandy land beside the sea, known as linksland. This ground had dunes, firm sandy soil, rough grass, rabbit holes and plenty of wind. It was not particularly useful for farming, so it was often left open for recreation, and somewhere around 600 years ago, my Scottish ancestors, when they weren't too busy fighting England or drinking whiskey, started whacking balls around these links. And they call the game gowf, which some people in Scotland still use today. Fancy game of gowf. Now, this basic game was nothing much like we know today. There were no tees or greens. Scotsmen played over, round and through natural landscapes, hitting balls into rabbit holes. The course could change every day. You just went down to links with your buddy and whacked the ball around. But it became kind of popular. So popular, in fact, that the Scottish king banned it. Apparently the Scots were too busy working on their swings to practice archery. So King James II banned it in 1457. But really that didn't go so well. The game never disappeared, and within 50 years, his successor, King James IV, became a keen golfer himself, and there was nothing stopping golf from there. The game grew, people started to lay out slightly more formalised courses and form clubs around the Scottish East Coast and places like St Andrews. We then started to play matches against each other and develop rules for the game before it started to spread around the world, first to England and then further afield. And really, that's enough history for you today. You get plenty of that in school. But we might do another pod digging into golf history in the future. But for now, you get the picture. Golf is a Scottish game, and don't let anyone tell you any different. But what is the actual point of golf? Well, the basic idea of golf is wonderfully simple. You begin each hole from an area called a tee. That's just a fixed starting point. You hit your ball towards a hole, which is normally marked by a flag, and you keep hitting it until the ball goes into the hole. The player who completes the course using the few shots wins. That's it. Unfortunately, golfers have spent hundreds of years making everything surrounding that simple idea much more complicated. So what does a golf course look like? Well, like we described at the top of the episode, golf started with people whacking balls around beside the sea in Scotland. Over time, more courses started to develop with defined holes. Our course could, though, have 3, 6, 12, 18, 21 holes, but finally someone decided that the entirely random number of 18 was perfect. So today, a full-size golf course normally has 18 holes, although many courses have 9. An 18-hole course is usually divided into 2 groups of 9. These are traditionally known as the front 9 and the back 9. And a hole is roughly between 100 and 500 metres long. Every hole begins at the tee, which is short grass with tee markers showing where you should hit from. And then a hole normally includes a fairway, which is a short grass leading towards the hole, putting green, where the hole and flag are located and which are smooth and nice to roll your ball on. Sounds easy so far? No. That'd be far too nice. Golf holes also include the rough, where the grass is longer and your ball becomes much harder to hit, bunkers, which are deep pits filled with sand, and sometimes lakes, streams, or other nasty penalty areas. So every hole in golf is given a number called its par. So par is the score that a very good golfer would normally be expected to make on that hole. Holes are either a par 3, usually a short hole where the player tries to reach the green with one shot, a par 4, where a good player normally needs 2 shots to reach the green, and a par 5, which is longer and normally takes 3 shots or 2 really good shots to reach the green. Most 18-hole courses have a total par somewhere around 70 to 72, and if you're paying attention in maths, that is roughly 18 times 4. But it can vary. Absolutely nothing wrong with a short course made up of all par 3s, and that is actually a really great place to start. Now here's the complicated bit when it comes to these pars, and we have lots of funny names for the scores that you make. So if you make a 4 on a par 4, that's called a par. Same for a 3 on a par 3, or a 5 on a par 5. Sounds pretty easy so far, right? Now if you score 1 better than par on a hole, that's a birdie. So 3 on a par 4 is a birdie. 2 better than par is an eagle. So a 2 on a par 4 is an eagle. 3 better than par is an albatross. So a 2 on a par 5 is an albatross. A lot of American friends would call it a double eagle. But honestly, if you ever get one of those, who cares about the name? It's that good. And when things start going bad, 1 over par is a bogey. Yes, a bogey, partly named after the bogeyman rather than snot from your nose. So a 5 on a par 4 is a bogey. 2 over par is a double bogey. So a 6 on a par 4 is a double bogey. And you can keep going, triple and quadruple bogeys, a full bonanza of snot. So, good rule of thumb, the good scores are named after increasingly impressive birds. Bad scores are like snot or creatures that live underneath your bed. Say what you like about those Scots, but they certainly had imagination. Now when you play golf, there are lots of different ways of playing it. The most straightforward version is called stroke play. You count every shot you take across the whole round, and at the end the player with the lowest score wins. That is a format used in most major professional tournaments. Another really popular format is match play. In match play, 2 players or teams compete 1 hole at a time, head to head. Does not matter if you win a hole with a brilliant birdie or with a horrible score of 9, you still win only 1 hole. This is what is used in the Ryder Cup, for example. There's also Stableford, where players collect points depending on the score in each hole. Stableford is useful because 1 disastrous hole doesn't wreck your entire round. And then there are also lots of other cool team formats in other games. But let's start off slow, right? So you might be thinking, I've just started. Won't everyone just beat me? Well, that's where golf is genius. You see it as a system called handicapping. And a handicap is a number that represents roughly how well a golfer can play, and it gives you extra shots to complete every hole. As you improve, your handicap normally becomes lower. So a beginner might have a handicap of around 40 or 50. A strong club player might have a handicap of around 9. And a handicap of 0 is often called scratch because they don't get any extra shots. They just have to play to par. Now you can get golfers with something called plus handicaps. That means that they are so good they actually have to play better than par for the course. Now, that can all feel pretty fuzzy, so let's give you a quick example. A 36 handicap is a level lots of kids get to sometime after starting to play. On an 18-hole course, that is 2 extra shots for each hole. Still paying attention there in maths? Right. So on every par 3, if you get a 5, that is actually a par, because you get to take 2 off. Nice, right? On a par 4, a 6 will be a par, and a 7 is a par and a par 5. Making sense? Handicaps are so great. They let you take on your dad, big sister, or friend who has been playing longer than you. Sounds complicated, but once you get used to it, really it's fine. You'll realise that the first question golfers often ask each other is, so what's your handicap? Okay, so what about the rules of golf? You might have heard these are super complicated. Well, right, golf does have rules, and they can feel complicated, but I'm going to give you a quick shortcut, which goes way back to the original Scottish rules, and can really help you. And that is simply, play the course as you find it, and play the ball as it lies. In other words, you hit your ball, you go find it, and you hit it again. Wherever your ball finishes, that is normally where you must play it again. even when it's behind a tree, even when it's buried in long grass, and even when it's rolled into a footprint in a bunker that looks as if it was left by a pterodactyl. If you follow these principles, you'll do fine. And normally when you get your first handicap, you'll have to learn a little about the rules. And they cover everything you could ever think of, including things like penalty shots when you hit your ball into water or lose your ball. Knowing the rules can really help your golf, but don't worry too much about them to start off with. And to be honest, most adult golfers aren't great with the rules either. Just remember that golf's a game of honesty. There's no referee or umpires like in football or tennis. It's up to you to follow the rules the best you can. Okay, so if even the rules haven't put you off, how do you get started? Well, first, you're going to need a golf ball. You guessed that, right? Kind of important. Golf balls are special, hard, small balls covered in hundreds of small dents called dimples. The dimples help the ball fly further and more steadily through the air. Fun fact is originally they were leather stuffed with feathers, then they were made of gum and all sorts of other things. But now we have things that are much more sophisticated and fly way better. Then after the ball, you need something to hit it with. So golfers use different clubs for different shots. A driver is normally used for the longest shots from the tee. Irons are used for many of the shots between the tee and the green. And a wedge is designed for shorter shots, higher shots, and escaping from bunker. Then you have the putter that rolls the ball across the green and ideally into the hole. Now, the rules say that golfers can carry a maximum of 14 clubs during a round. But beginners don't need anything like 14 clubs. A few basic clubs, some golf balls, comfortable clothes, and you're on your way. And you can get all of these second-hand from a local golf shop or eBay or similar. You don't need to spend much, and most places will lend you a club for your first try. So my boys started with one club, a 7-iron. What is important is that the club is roughly the right size for you. Adult clubs are too long and heavy, it'll be impossible to use, so most junior clubs will come with a size or an age range. Make sure you check them out and get something that's roughly right for you. Alright, you've got the gear now. I've understood some rules. Where can you play? So first of all, you don't have to join a fancy, expensive private golf club. Traditional golf clubs normally have members who pay an annual fee to use the course, and they are great places. Many of them also welcome visitors who pay a green fee for one round. Then there are public and municipal courses where anyone can just book and play. There are also 9-hole courses, short courses, pitch-and-putt courses that can be easier and quicker for beginners. If you're lucky, you'll have an adult who can take you to one of these smaller courses to start off. But I'd recommend starting at something called a driving range, where you whack a basket of balls from the same position. It's great, you don't need to go and look for your ball, worry if you miss it, you just whack away. Even better is that lots of ranges now have ball tracking technology. We can play fun games. Check out Toptracer Range, for example, where you can play Angry Birds or catch fish with your golf shots. Indoor golf simulators are also great, especially in the winter. These are like a range, but you hit into a soft wall a few meters in front of you. Then you even have putting courses, or putt-putt as you call it in the US, and adventure golf. And these are awesome ways just to try something out. So that all means that golf does not always mean walking around an 18-hole course for 4 or 5 hours or spending lots of money. You might play 9 holes after school. You might spend half an hour at a driving range. You might play in a simulator while it's snowing outside. Or you might play a dinosaur adventure golf putting course and lose to your younger brother after your ball becomes trapped underneath the Triceratops. It all counts, and it's all great, and it's all golf. So how do we sum up then just what golf is? Well, golf is a game in which you try to move a ball from a tee into a hole using as few shots as possible. But it can also be a competition, a walk, a puzzle, a family activity, or just an excuse to whack some balls. It can be played on ancient linksland beside the sea, but it can be played underneath floodlights at a driving range. It can be played inside in a simulator. It's even been played on the moon. You don't have to understand every rule. You do not need 14 clubs. You do not need fancy clothes, and you do not need to be a member of an expensive golf club. Easiest way to discover golf is simply to pick up a club and try and hit a ball. First you might miss, then you might hit the ground, then you might hit the ball sideways, but eventually You will catch one properly, ball will fly into the air and go roughly where you want it to go. And that one shot will make you want to try again and again and again, and you'll be hooked. And you'll realise that golf is the greatest game of them all. Thanks again for listening to GolfLoopz, the golf podcast for kids. Now this week, we're actually on site at the Open Championship in England, the oldest and greatest event in the sport, and hope to bring you some great pods from here. Stay tuned. Till next time, remember, play the course as you find it, play the ball as it lies, and when neither of those things seems remotely fair, well, welcome to golf. 4